Hi, I'm Sophie. Today's story. It's one of betrayal, boundaries, and the moment you finally decide, enough is enough. This is the story of Hannah Morgan and how she reclaimed everything that was stolen from her, starting with her own front door. At 25, Hannah was living on the other side of the country in a cramped 400-square-foot staff apartment, assigned there temporarily to gain traction in her rising career. It wasn't glamorous, just 4 white walls, a twin bed, and a mini fridge, but it was hers. Still, it was nothing compared to the warm 3-bedroom apartment she had inherited from her dad. That place, nestled in a cozy tree-lined neighborhood back home, was her real sanctuary. Until it wasn't. You see, Hannah's father had died in a sudden plane crash just a year after she graduated from college. One minute he was texting her about turbulence over Denver, and the next his name appeared on the news ticker as a confirmed passenger on a downed flight. It shattered her. But in his will he left her that apartment and a financial cushion, enough to offer the stability he'd always wanted her to have after the divorce. Hannah's parents had split when she was 13. It wasn't a war, just a quiet goodbye. Her father moved out and Hannah stayed with her mother in the old family home. Weekends were Dad's. For a while, life had a rhythm again. Then came Thomas, her mother's second husband. He wasn't cruel, just always there, like a placeholder in a chair that used to belong to her dad. A year after they married, Hannah got a baby half-brother, Noah. That's when her role in the house shifted permanently from daughter to unpaid babysitter. Hannah, could you watch Noah tonight? Became the most common thing her mother said to her. Not, how was school? Not, you okay, honey? Just, can you help with the baby? And then there was Melissa, Thomas's daughter from a previous marriage, 10 years older, already married with a baby when she first showed up. She breezed in and out of holidays, her husband Brian in tow, and Hannah watched her mother light up like a Christmas tree around them. When Hannah was 17, she came home one December to find her childhood bedroom had been turned into Melissa's guest room, crib and all. Her own belongings had been shoved into the cramped office without a word. "It's just for the holidays," her mom said, avoiding eye contact. "Melissa needs the space." That was the moment Hannah understood something deeply painful. She was no longer the priority in her own home. After high school, she left for college, on a scholarship and with help from her dad. Not a dime came from her mother or Thomas. During breaks, she stayed at her dad's apartment. That became her real home. And when he died, her grandmother Ruth stepped in, becoming her emotional anchor. Over time, Hannah tried to rebuild her relationship with her mother, mostly for Noah's sake. But every visit reminded her that Melissa and her family, now with 2 kids, still took over her old room like it was their rightful territory. And her mother welcomed them like they were royalty, while Hannah stood awkwardly on the sidelines. Then came the work opportunity, 6 months in California. Before Hannah left, her mom offered, over coffee one morning, "You could rent out your apartment while you're gone. Might make some extra money?" "No thanks," Hannah replied quickly. "I don't want strangers in there." Her mom pursed her lips. "Well, I'll keep an eye on it. I still have the spare key you gave me last year." That key would become the symbol of betrayal. Hannah's new life on the West Coast was lonely but manageable. She had her job, and she called Grandma Ruth every Sunday. It was during one of those calls just last week that everything shifted. Hannah, her grandmother, began cautiously. "I don't want to cause trouble, but Marge from my bridge club lives in your building." She said something strange. Hannah's stomach dropped. "What about my apartment?" "She says Melissa and her family moved in. Not just visiting, living there, moved in shortly after you left. Your mom and Thomas helped them." It hit like a punch to the gut. Cold, sharp, familiar. Hannah called her mom immediately, forcing a calm voice. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Everything okay with the apartment?" "Oh, yes," her mother said, a little too brightly. "Everything's fine." But Hannah knew. Deep down, she already knew. The phone call had confirmed what Hannah already knew in her gut. But hearing her mother admit it, that was another wound entirely. "Yes, it's true," her mother had sighed, but they had nowhere else to go. No apology, no remorse, just excuses, and an infuriating sense of entitlement. Melissa wasn't just anyone, her mother insisted. She was family. But to Hannah, that word had long since lost its warmth. Melissa was Thomas's daughter, not her sister. And moving into Hannah's apartment without so much as a call? That wasn't family. That was theft wrapped in a fake hug. Hannah hung up on that final, cold exchange. She tried to call back. Nothing. Straight to voicemail. Melissa's number? Also silent. 6 months of paying utilities on an apartment she hadn't touched, only to find it hijacked by people who felt more like squatters than kin. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Instead, she did what her father had taught her to do when the world went sideways. Handle your business. She called David, her boss. "It's Hannah. I need to transfer back to the home office. Something's happened. It's family." David didn't hesitate. Hannah had earned her stripes long ago. "Take care of what you need. Let me know when you're ready." The flight back felt like it took days. Somewhere over Arizona, Hannah stopped running scenarios in her head. There would be no confrontation scene with yelling, no dramatic speech. Just action. This time, it would be different. She stepped off the plane into the sticky summer air, grabbed her suitcase, and hailed a taxi straight to her grandmother's house. Grandma Ruth's face lit up as always when she opened the door, but this time there was something else in her expression. Concern. The kind that comes from watching a loved one walk back into a storm they didn't start but now had to finish. "I didn't expect you back so soon," she said, pulling Hannah into a hug. She still smelled like lavender and coffee. "I couldn't stay away," Hannah whispered. "I need to see what they've done to my place." "Not on an empty stomach, you don't," Ruth said firmly. "Sit. I'll make tea." Hannah nodded, grateful for something grounding. She called David to let him know she'd landed safely, then sat at the kitchen table as her grandmother moved with the quiet precision of a woman who'd weathered plenty of her own storms. "Have you spoken to your mom since?" Ruth asked. Hannah shook her head. "She hung up on me. I tried to call her back, but she ignored it. Same with Melissa." Ruth's lips thinned. "Linda and I haven't had a real conversation since your father passed, but I did drive by your building yesterday. Their car was parked right outside, and so was yours." Hannah froze. "My car? The one I left in Mom's garage?" Her grandmother nodded, the look on her face telling Hannah everything she needed to know. That was it. Hannah stood. "I'm going over there." The ride to her apartment was silent. Her thoughts buzzed, louder than the cab's rattling AC. When she arrived, the sight of her building, red brick, black trim, the place her dad had proudly shown her years ago, hit her like a gut punch. It was supposed to be her future. Instead, it had become a battleground. She took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Her palms were damp. She walked to Unit 307. Her apartment knocked, firmly, no answer. Again, louder. Still nothing, but she heard faint movement inside. They were home. Just hiding. She pulled out her key, her original key, but the lock didn't turn. Changed. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered. She banged again. "I know you're in there. This is my apartment." Silence. 5 more minutes passed before she gave up. her fury simmering just under her skin. She walked out, jaw clenched, and called another cab. This time she headed to the source, her mother's house, the same pristine split level in the suburbs, the same neatly trimmed hedges, the same porch swing Thomas had built for Noah. Everything was exactly as it had been 6 months ago. It was the kind of house people passed by and assumed everything was perfect inside. Hannah knew better. She marched up to the front door and pressed the bell like it owed her money. The chime echoed inside. Her mother answered, and for a moment, her face flashed with surprise. Then it hardened. "Hannah," she said flatly, arms crossed, "what are you doing here?" That was it. No hug, no, "I'm sorry," just an accusation. "What am I doing here?" Hannah repeated. "I live here, in this city, in an apartment that you gave away like it was a hand-me-down sweater, without asking." Her mother's jaw tightened. Behind her, Thomas appeared, eyebrows already raised like he'd been rehearsing a speech. "You should have stayed on the West Coast," her mom said. Things were going fine. "For who?" Hannah demanded. "Because I just tried to open the door to my apartment and guess what? The locks were changed." Thomas stepped forward. "Melissa and Brian need that apartment more than you do. They've got 2 kids. You're just one person." Hannah blinked, stunned at the bluntness. "It's not about who needs it more. It's not about head count. It's about ownership. Dad left that apartment to me." "Me." "You weren't using it," her mother said, dismissive. "Melissa lost her place. Were we supposed to let them live on the street?" "You could have asked," Hannah said, voice sharp. "Or let them stay here. This place has 4 bedrooms." Thomas scowled. "We don't have space." Hannah shook her head. "You had enough space for my car, though, didn't you?" Her mother looked away. "Melissa needed it. Her car broke down." "I didn't authorize that," Hannah said, fire building behind her eyes. "None of this, and I want it all back, today." Her mother's face was stone. "Your things from the apartment? They're in the garage. You should come get them. They're in the way." "In the way," Hannah repeated quietly, like she always had been. She stepped back from the doorway, pulled out her phone, and began dialing a moving company. Because this time, Hannah wasn't asking. She was taking it all back. My mother's face had already turned cold before I opened my mouth, but it was the way she crossed her arms, as if I was just some annoying visitor and not her daughter, that nearly knocked the air out of me. "What are you doing here?" she said, like I'd crashed some stranger's dinner party instead of standing outside the house where I once lived. I couldn't believe it. "What am I doing here? I live in this city, I pay taxes here, and I'm the legal owner of the apartment you handed over like it was an old couch you didn't need." "You should have stayed where you were," Mom replied, brushing off the anger in my voice. "Things were working out just fine." "For who?" I asked. "Certainly not for me. Someone changed the locks. I couldn't even get inside my own place." That's when Thomas stepped forward, arms folded like a proud guard dog. "Melissa and Brian need that apartment more than you do. They've got 2 kids. You're just one person." My jaw clenched. "So, that doesn't make it theirs. It's mine. My dad left it to me. That's not up for debate." "You weren't using it," my mother countered with a shrug. "Melissa lost her apartment. What were we supposed to do? Let them be homeless?" "You could have asked," I said, my voice getting sharper. "You could have helped them find something else. Or better yet, let them stay here. This house has plenty of room." Thomas's face darkened. "We don't have the space, and frankly, Melissa deserves that apartment more than you do. She has a family to support." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "And my car?" I shot back, remembering what Grandma Ruth had said. "The one I left in your garage before I moved across the country?" Thomas didn't even blink. "Melissa needed transportation. Her car broke down. Yours was just sitting there." I turned to Mom, hoping, just hoping, to see even a flicker of guilt. But her face remained blank, distant. "Your things from the apartment are in our garage," she said matter-of-factly. "You should take them. They're in the way." "In the way," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper, like I always was. Without another word, I pulled out my phone and called a moving service. As I stood waiting on their pristine lawn, Mom mumbled something about coming inside. I refused. I wasn't setting foot in that house, ever again. When the van arrived, I guided the movers to the garage, where my furniture, boxes, and belongings were carelessly stacked like junk at a yard sale. "Where to, ma'am?" the head mover asked. "My grandmother's place," Sussy and I replied, giving him Ruth's address. "Everything goes there." As the movers loaded my life into the truck, a school bus pulled up to the curb. Noah jumped off, his backpack bouncing behind him. The moment he saw me, his face lit up. "Hannah!" he shouted, running toward me. My heart ached at the sound, but Mom stepped in like a goalie on a mission. "Go inside and start your homework," she said briskly. "Hannah's busy." Noah looked up at her, confused, then back at me. He didn't say another word, just nodded and walked away, glancing over his shoulder with sad eyes as the door closed behind him. When the last box was loaded, I turned to my mother. "What are you going to do when I take my apartment back? Because I will." "Don't cause problems, Hannah," she warned, her voice suddenly low. "Melissa has nowhere else to go right now." "That's not my problem," I said, climbing into the passenger seat of the moving van. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. My mother stood on the front porch, arms wrapped around herself like she wasn't sure whether to be angry or afraid. Or maybe, for once, unsure of what to say. At Grandma Ruth's, the movers carried everything into her garage. My entire life, so carefully built and brutally displaced, now lived in cardboard boxes next to an old lawnmower and her holiday decorations. After they left, Grandma put her arm gently around my shoulder. "What now?" she asked. I stared at the boxes. At the coffee table Dad refinished. At the bookshelf he bought me for my first apartment. At all the pieces of myself I'd tried so hard to preserve. "I'll figure it out tomorrow," I said, my voice flat. "Right now, I just need to sleep." That night, lying in the twin bed in Grandma's guest room, the decision formed quietly but clearly in my mind. This ends now. No more being the reasonable daughter. No more going along to keep the peace. No more giving everything away to people who wouldn't give her a second thought. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I made coffee, had toast with Grandma, and opened my laptop. "I'm going to the police," I said as she topped off my cup. She blinked. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "They're not tenants, they're squatters, and they're driving my car. That has to be illegal." I called the local police department and explained everything. The officer who picked up listened patiently, then said, "You'll need to come in to file a formal complaint, but yes, this qualifies as unauthorized use of private property." I kissed Grandma goodbye and headed to the station. That's where I met Officer Hill. She was direct, but her eyes were kind. I showed her my ID, the deed to the apartment, and the car title, thankfully all backed up in my cloud drive. She reviewed everything carefully, then looked at me and said, "This is clear cut. We'll escort you there and assist with a formal eviction." Relief flooded me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. "How soon can we go?" I asked. She closed her notebook and stood. "Give me 1 hour. You're getting your home back today." 1 hour later, just as promised, Officer Hill returned. this time with a second officer, a tall man with sharp eyes and a quiet presence named Grant. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. My palms were clammy, my stomach churning like I'd had nothing but gas station coffee and dread all day, which, to be fair, I had. We took separate vehicles, me in a taxi since Melissa was still joyriding in my car and the officers in their cruiser. We met outside my apartment building. That red brick warehouse I used to love now felt like a battlefield. As we rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, the reality hit me hard. This was it. The confrontation? The moment I stopped being quiet and accommodating and started taking back what was mine. Officer Hill stepped forward and knocked, firm and official. "Police, please open the door." There was a pause, then shuffling. A voice, deep, male, filtered through the wood. "What's going on?" It was Brian, Melissa's husband. "Sir, please open the door," Officer Grant replied. The deadbolt clicked and the door cracked open. Brian's eyes widened when he saw me standing between 2 uniformed officers. "What the hell, Hannah?" "Open it all the way, sir," Hill instructed. Reluctantly, he swung the door wide. And there it was, my apartment, only unrecognizable. Toys were scattered across the hardwood floor. My sleek coffee table had been replaced by something big and plastic and sticky with juice residue. The gray walls I had painted with my dad years ago, covered now in a blinding yellow. My cozy reading chair was gone, replaced with a garish floral couch I wouldn't have touched at a garage sale. Melissa appeared from the hallway, a toddler perched on one hip, her older child peeking nervously from behind her legs. Her expression was stone cold. "You should have called first," she snapped. I blinked. Called? To enter my own home? My voice was sharp, sharper than I'd ever let it get before. But I didn't care. Officer Hill stepped between us. "Ma'am, this apartment is legally owned by Ms. Morgan. You are occupying it without her consent." Melissa's cheeks flushed. "Her mother gave us permission. We have kids. We had nowhere else to go." "She is not the owner," Officer Grant said firmly. "Only the legal property holder has the authority to grant long-term residence." "This is ridiculous," Brian cut in. "We've been living here for months. We fixed things. We painted. We even installed a new dishwasher." "Which I never asked for," I added, motioning towards the absurd yellow walls. Officer Hill was done being patient. "You need to vacate the premises immediately. Ms. Morgan has not consented to your occupancy. You may pack essentials now. The rest must be removed within 24 hours. Melissa's composure cracked. Her face crumpled, and tears welled in her eyes. "But we have 2 kids. Where are we supposed to go?" she asked, looking at me like I was the one who had upended her life. "How can you do this to family?" That word, family, lit something inside me I didn't even know was still burning. "You were never my family, Melissa," I said, voice steady but fierce. "You took my mother's attention, my bedroom, and now my apartment and car. You've taken enough." Melissa broke into loud sobs, her kids clinging to her legs. "You're just like your father," she spat. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Don't talk about my father, not one word." Brian put a protective arm around her. "Come on, Jess, let's get what we need and go to your dad's." I stood in the doorway, watching them shove clothes into bags and sweep up scattered toys. Melissa kept shooting me dagger glances between hiccuped sobs, but I didn't flinch. The officers stayed close, ensuring nothing was broken or stolen in their haste. About an hour later, they were finally ready. Melissa marched past me, her children trailing behind like shadows. She didn't say a word. Brian paused just long enough to drop my car keys onto the counter with a bitter clatter. "We fixed your faucet and bought you a new dishwasher. You're welcome." They left. Officer Hill turned to me. "Do you want to press charges for the unauthorized use of your vehicle?" I thought about it, about the lies, the manipulation, the sheer nerve. "No," I said softly. "I just want my life back." She nodded and handed me the formal paperwork confirming I had regained legal possession of my property. Once they left, I closed the door, my door, and leaned against it, breathing in the silence. I walked through each room slowly, like touring a crime scene of my own stolen peace. The kitchen had been completely rearranged. The soft gray had been butchered by yellow. My office had been converted into a nursery. And the couch, oh, that hideous floral monstrosity, sat right in the middle of it all like a taunt. Then I walked into the bathroom and froze. Written across the mirror in what looked like red lipstick were 6 thick letters, BASTARD. I stared at it, at myself, reflected behind that ugly word. 6 months ago, I might have cried. I might have felt guilt. But now, all I felt was resolve. I grabbed a paper towel, dampened it under the faucet, and started scrubbing. Because this was the start of something new, and I was finally taking my life back. The red smear on the mirror was gone. So was the rage. Standing there with the paper towel still in hand, I looked at my reflection, finally unobstructed, finally clear. 6 months ago, I might have sobbed. I might have questioned myself, wondered if I'd done the right thing. But now, I felt the kind of calm that only comes after reclaiming something no one had the right to take. I moved slowly to the living room window and pulled the curtain back just enough to peer outside. Across the street, Brian was loading the last of the suitcases into a silver SUV. Not my car, that thankfully was parked legally and securely back in its designated spot. Melissa sat in the passenger seat, face blotchy and stiff, her hands folded in her lap like she was bracing herself for impact. I didn't wave. I didn't glare. I just watched as they drove off. And with that, the weight lifted. The days that followed were filled with motion. Restoration became my mission. First, the locksmith, every lock in the apartment, every keyhole and deadbolt, replaced. I watched from the doorway as the man worked, a quiet sense of power settling in my chest. I was securing not just my apartment, but my peace. Next came the cleaners. A local crew with a no-nonsense leader named Sheila who took one look at the yellow walls and said, "Oh, honey, we'll take care of that horror show." I laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. The garish furniture went next. I scheduled a donation pickup and stood in the doorway as someone else carted away the hideous floral couch and mismatched tables. By the end of the day, I had my space back, cleared, cleansed, and mine. I spent the following weekend with a gallon of soft gray paint and a playlist of Dad's old favorite songs, humming along as I returned each wall to its original calm. The same walls we painted together after college. The same ones that had once made this place feel like home. My phone rang nonstop. First Mom, then Thomas, then, shockingly, Melissa. I didn't answer. I wasn't interested in guilt trips, manipulation, or sob stories. I focused instead on unpacking boxes from Grandma's garage and rebuilding my space, one item at a time. Only when Grandma Ruth called did I pick up. "They're all staying here now," she told me with a sigh. Linda showed up furious, started yelling. I hung up on her. "Good for you," I said, standing on a ladder with a roller in hand. "I'm almost done wiping every trace of them out of this apartment." 3 days after the eviction, I was halfway through shelving my books when the phone rang again. The screen flashed, "Mom," Against my better judgment, I answered. "What do you want?" I asked, not bothering with hellos. She didn't waste time either. "How could you do this to your sister?" she shrieked. "You threw her and those innocent children out onto the street." I set down the book I was holding and closed my eyes. First of all, Melissa is not my sister. Second, I didn't throw anyone out. They're staying with you, which is where they should have been in the first place. "They can't stay here forever," she snapped. "We don't have room." "That's not my problem. Maybe you should have thought about that before you gave away my apartment and my car." Her voice turned bitter. "You're so selfish, Hannah. Melissa needed that apartment more than you do. Grandma's going to pass soon, and you'll get her house too. You could have let Melissa have this one." And there it was. The truth, exposed like a nerve. "Is that what this was about?" I asked quietly. "You think I'm going to inherit too much, so you decided to start redistributing my life like I was some kind of charity case? Oh, don't be dramatic. We're talking about family here." "No," I cut in. "We're talking about property, about what Dad left to me. And Grandma's house? That's her decision, not yours." There was a pause. Then her voice softened. Faux warmth layered over manipulation. "Look, Hannah, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? We can talk about all this like adults. Noah misses you." His name hit me like a soft blow. For a second, I almost faltered, but I didn't. The time for talking was before you violated my trust. "I'm done, Mom. I'm done with all of this." "Don't say that," she replied, but her voice was unsteady now. "I mean it. Don't call me, don't show up, don't try to guilt me. Tell Noah I love him. And when he's older, if he wants to find me, he can. But as for you, Thomas and Melissa, you're not my family anymore." I hung up, blocked her, blocked Thomas, blocked Melissa. Then I sat on my newly reclaimed couch and let the tears come. Not for the people I was walking away from, but for the girl I used to be, the one who kept trying to win their love with silence and sacrifice. The next morning, a knock came at my door. Peering through the peephole, I saw a familiar figure. "David," I said, surprised, opening the door. "Morning," he said, holding 2 coffees. "Thought I'd check on my favorite employee. Mind if I come in?" As I brewed a fresh pot in the kitchen, David wandered the apartment, taking in the soft gray walls, the restored shelves, the peace. "Looks great," he said. "Better than that shoebox they had you in out west." I smiled. "Thanks. It was my dad's. Still is, in a way." Over coffee, I told him the whole story, from the divorce to the betrayal to the eviction. He listened quietly, nodding. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "You ready to come back to work?" "Actually, yeah, I think I am." He smiled. "Good. I've got something special lined up for you. Starts Monday." As he left, I stood in the doorway of my apartment and looked around, not at what had been taken, but at everything I had reclaimed. My space, my voice, my future. This was home. Finally, truly, mine. David had listened quietly as I laid it all out, from the betrayal to the eviction, to the moment I finally stood up for myself. When I finished, he gave a small nod, his expression thoughtful. "Well," he said slowly, "are you ready to come back? The home office has definitely missed you." I smiled, letting the question settle in my chest. "Actually, yes, I think I need the distraction." "Good," he replied, rising. "There's a new project, and I think you're the perfect fit. It kicks off Monday." After he left, I called Grandma and invited her over for dinner. As we passed bowls across the table, I told her the rest, that I'd cut off Mom, Thomas, and Melissa. The words came out heavy. "Maybe that makes me a terrible person," I said softly. Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. No, sweetheart. It makes you a person with boundaries. That's something your mother never learned to respect. Your father would be proud. I hesitated. I just feel bad about Noah. He'll understand when he's older, she said gently. And if he doesn't, that's his decision. Months passed. I threw myself into work, restored my apartment one room at a time, and spent my weekends with Grandma Ruth. I eventually heard, through her, that Melissa and her family had found a rental. No anger, no gloating, just relief. The chapter had finally closed. Then, on a crisp Saturday morning in early October, I was sipping coffee at my favorite cafe when a small shadow slipped into the seat across from me. It was Noah, his backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes full of hope. "Hi, Hannah," he said, tentative. My heart caught. "How did you find me?" He shrugged. "Mom said you used to come here. I've been checking every Saturday." We talked, laughed, reconnected. As he left, he asked, "Can I come again next week?" I smiled. Same time, same table. Sometimes, family isn't the one you're born into. It's the one you choose to build. Mine may be small, but it's real. And for the first time in years, it felt like enough. Life has a way of teaching us when it's time to stop asking for respect and start demanding it. Hannah's journey reminds us that betrayal doesn't always come in explosive moments. Sometimes it seeps in quietly, disguised as family obligations, just helping out, or they needed it more. But boundaries, once crossed repeatedly, don't protect, they erode. For many in midlife, especially those who've given endlessly to loved ones, Hannah's story hits hard. She tried to be the peacekeeper, the helper, the silent sacrificer. And what did it cost her? Her home, her peace, and nearly her voice. But when she stopped explaining and started reclaiming her apartment, her car, her life, she also reclaimed her worth. The message is simple yet profound. Your generosity should never be weaponized against you. Family ties should never be an excuse for exploitation. And walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Whether you're navigating strained relationships, late-life betrayals, or redefining your sense of home, remember, you're allowed to draw a line. You're allowed to choose peace over people who confuse love with entitlement. And sometimes, like Hannah, you find healing not through reconciliation, but through resolve